On the afternoon of April 12, 2006, police in the outskirts of Beijing discovered the body of a young woman dumped in a desolate stretch of woods. She had been strangled, left with no identification, yet was adorned in expensive jewelry. Just days earlier, a frantic university student had rushed into a police station, claiming his girlfriend had vanished into thin air. What began as a missing person case quickly spiraled into a dark investigation, exposing a toxic web of transactional love, infidelity, and a deception so profound it cost a life. Please support the channel by hitting the subscribe button as we delve into this case. It was noon on April 9th, 2006. The spring air in Beijing was still crisp when a young man burst through the doors of a local police precinct. The officers on duty immediately noticed his disheveled appearance. His breathing was shallow, his eyes darting around the room in a state of visible panic. He introduced himself as Wu Jiang, a 21-year-old student currently enrolled at the Beijing University of Technology. He was trembling as he told the desk sergeant that he had lost all contact with his girlfriend, a fellow student named Zhu Yueping, since the previous evening. Wu Jiang explained that he and Zhu Yueping were the same age and attended the same university. According to his statement, the last time he saw her was on the evening of April 8th. She had told him she was going to visit a female friend named Jiayi and planned to stay there overnight for a sleepover. It sounded like a routine plan, the kind of casual arrangement college students make every weekend. Wu Jiang hadn't thought twice about it. However, the reality of the situation shattered that morning. When Wu Jiang arrived at their morning classes, Zhu Yueping was nowhere to be found. His concern growing, he tracked down the friend, Jie, hoping to find Zhu with her. But Jie's response sent a chill down his spine. Zhu Yueping had never arrived at her house the night before. She hadn't seen or heard from her at all. Panic began to set in. Wu Jiang immediately tried calling Zhu's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail or rang out endlessly. Desperate, he called Zhu's parents, hoping she had perhaps returned to her family home unexpectedly. They confirmed she was not there. He then reached out to every mutual friend in their circle, calling number after number, but the answer was always the same. No one had seen Zhu Yueping. She had effectively vanished. Realizing this was beyond his control, Wu Jiang rushed to the police station to plead for help. However, the officers explained the procedural constraints. Since the timeline from the previous evening to noon that day did not yet constitute 24 hours, they could not officially launch a missing person manhunt just yet. They tried to calm him down, advising him to return home and wait. It was possible, they suggested, that she had simply gone somewhere else and lost track of time. If she still hadn't returned after a significant period, they would initiate a formal search. Wu Jiang left the station, but the police's reassurance did nothing to quell the dread in his stomach. He couldn't just sit and wait. Upon returning to the university area, he rallied a group of classmates to conduct their own search. The group theorized that perhaps something terrible had happened to her while she was in transit. They mapped out the route from the rental apartment Wu shared with Zhu to Jiayi's house, the path she allegedly took on the evening of April 8th. They combed the streets for hours. They checked alleyways and scanned the roadsides for any sign of an accident. As daylight faded into evening, the search yielded nothing. The group's anxiety shifted from a simple disappearance to the possibility of a medical emergency. They split up and visited hospitals throughout the district, asking the emergency room staff if they had admitted any young women fitting Zhu's description, perhaps as a Jane Doe unconscious from a traffic accident. From the evening of the 8th through the entirety of the 9th, no hospital in the area had a record of an unidentified female patient. The theory of a traffic accident began to crumble, replaced by a much more sinister possibility: abduction. The group began to spiral. If she had been kidnapped, why hadn't there been a ransom call? Why hadn't the kidnappers contacted Wu Jiang or her parents? The silence was deafening. Despite the darkness of the night setting in, the group of students refused to give up, continuing to scour the streets for any trace of their missing friend. One of the major hurdles in retracing her steps was the lack of surveillance. The rental housing area where Wu Jiang and Zhu lived was an older district, lacking the modern CCTV coverage found in the city center. There was no digital footprint of her leaving the apartment. Wu Jiang recalled that he had offered to drive her to Jiai's house that evening, but Zhu had declined. She insisted the distance wasn't far and that she wanted to walk to enjoy the fresh air. She had told him explicitly not to worry, that she was capable of walking alone. Because she often walked to nearby locations, Wu Jiang hadn't pressed the issue. As the students asked around the neighborhood, they uncovered a disturbing detail from residents living along the road Zhu would have taken. Several neighbors reported hearing aggressive, loud barking from local dogs on the night of the 8th. One family had even gone outside to investigate the commotion, but saw nothing in the shadows and returned indoors. Residents explained to the students that this particular stretch of road was sparsely populated. The houses were set far back from the street, separated by dense trees and overgrowth. It was known as a blind spot in the neighborhood, a place that attracted petty thieves and, occasionally, more dangerous elements. Most locals locked their doors tight as soon as the sun went down. Hearing this, Wu Jiang's imagination began to run wild with worst-case scenarios. He and his friends circled that specific area, looking for signs of a struggle, a dropped shoe, a bag, anything. But the darkness hid its secrets well. Near midnight, exhausted and defeated, the group finally disbanded. Wu Jiang returned to the rental apartment he shared with Zhu. As he approached the door, he stopped cold. The door was unlatched, standing slightly ajar. His heart leaped. He assumed Zhu must have returned while he was out searching. He pushed the door open and rushed inside, ready to embrace her. But instead of relief, he found chaos. The room was a mess. Drawers were pulled open. Items were scattered across the floor. Wu Jiang's first instinct was to scream, thinking they had been robbed. However, as he frantically scanned the room, the nature of the disarray didn't add up. He noticed that cash and several valuable items, electronics, and things that a burglar would grab first were still sitting in plain sight. They hadn't been touched. What was missing was specific: Zhu Yuping's clothes and her large suitcase. Wu Jiang stood in the middle of the room, confused and terrified. The scene suggested something bizarre. It looked as though Zhu had come back, hastily packed her bags, and left again. But why? Why would she leave without saying a word? Why leave the door unlatched? Why ignore his calls? Their relationship had its ups and downs, and they argued like any couple. But things had been relatively stable recently. He racked his brain for any fight or disagreement that could have triggered her to run away, but he came up blank. The next morning, Wu Jiang called Zhu's parents again to report this new development. To his surprise, the elderly couple didn't seem panicked. Her father explained with a sigh that this was somewhat typical behavior for his daughter. He told Wu Jiang that whenever Zhu got angry or felt stifled, she had a habit of running away from home for a few days to cool off. She always came back eventually. Her father advised Wu Jiang to relax, assuring him that she would likely reappear in a day or two when she ran out of money or got bored. Hearing this from her parents offered Wu Jiang a sliver of relief. He decided not to return to the police station to update the report, clinging to the hope that she was just throwing a tantrum and would walk through the door any moment. But she didn't come back. Days turned into nights, and the silence from Zhu Yueping continued. The runaway theory began to lose its weight as the clock ticked past the 48-hour mark, then 72 hours. On April 12th, 3 days after Wu Jiang's initial report, the Beijing police received a grim call. A local in the suburban outskirts of the city had discovered a body in a remote patch of woods. Detectives and forensic units were immediately dispatched to seal off the scene. The location was desolate, far from the bustling university district. Lying amidst the undergrowth was the body of a female. The forensic pathologist began the preliminary examination on site. The victim was a young woman, estimated to be around 20 years old. She stood approximately 5 feet 3 inches tall. Based on the state of the body, the coroner estimated she had been dead for 3 to 4 days, aligning perfectly with the timeline of Zhu Yueping's disappearance. The cause of death was immediately apparent: mechanical asphyxiation. She had been strangled to death. There were no stab wounds, gunshot wounds, or blunt force trauma markings on the rest of her body. The victim had long black hair and was dressed in a cream-colored t-shirt and brown trousers, with strappy sandals on her feet. But it was her accessories that caught the investigators' eyes. She was wearing a watch on her left wrist, a silver necklace and earrings, and her fingernails were manicured and painted. This styling provided immediate profiling clues. The victim appeared to be someone of financial means, or perhaps someone who worked in the entertainment or nightlife industry, where appearance was paramount. This wasn't the attire of a local farm girl from this rural suburb. Investigators analyzed the ground around the body. The soil was a mess of footprints, chaotic and overlapping. It was impossible to isolate a single suspect's print, because the footprints belonged to the curious locals who had gathered before the police arrived. The crime scene had been contaminated. However, a closer look revealed a lack of struggle. There was no overturned earth or broken branches indicative of a fight for life at this specific spot. This led the police to a crucial conclusion. This was not the primary crime scene. The killer had murdered her elsewhere and dumped the body here. Furthermore, the motive didn't appear to be robbery. The victim was still wearing her jewelry and watch. If a thief had killed her, they would have stripped her of these valuables. This pointed toward a crime of passion, revenge, or a personal dispute. The priority was identification. No one in the local crowd recognized her. She carried no purse, no wallet, and no ID card. The area was poor, populated mostly by farmers. Young people from this region usually left for the city to work or study. The few who stayed behind worked in agriculture and wouldn't be dressed in such urban, fashionable clothing. Police were certain she was from the city. The investigative team compiled a description of the victim, her height, age, clothing, and jewelry, and broadcast it through local media channels, hoping for a lead. A day later, the phone at the precinct rang. A young woman named Jai, a student at the Beijing University of Technology, was on the line. She told officers she had seen the news report on television. The description of the victim's clothing and physical characteristics matched her best friend, Zhu Yueping, who had been missing for several days. The police requested Jai come in for a formal identification. She arrived accompanied by a young man, Wu Zhang. The moment they were taken to the morgue, the tension was palpable. As the sheet was pulled back, the reaction was instantaneous. Both Jia and Wu Zhang broke down. It was undeniably Zhu Yueping. Wu Zhang, through his tears, reiterated his story to the homicide detectives. He told them about the night of the report, how he had come home to find the door ajar and her suitcase missing. He explained his confusion. If she had come home to pack and leave, how did she end up strangled in a forest miles away? The identification changed everything. The victim now had a name, a history, and a social circle. The police shifted their focus to mapping out Zhu Yueping's relationships. In a murder investigation where robbery is ruled out, the perpetrator is almost always someone the victim knew. Wu Zhang sat down for a formal interrogation. He described their living situation. They were cohabiting, young and in love, though he admitted it wasn't perfect. Zhu Yueping, he said, was high maintenance. She was prone to sulking and had a temper, but he insisted their problems were typical couple spats. He claimed he was the pacifier in the relationship, always yielding to her demands to keep the peace. He confirmed that Jia was indeed the friend Zhu was supposed to visit that fatal night. Jia was interviewed separately, and she painted a more complex picture of the couple. She described Zhu Yueping as stubborn and demanding, a girl who knew she was beautiful and used it to her advantage. Before living with Wu Jiang, Zhu had been through 2 other serious relationships, both ending badly. Jia Yi confirmed that Zhu came from a financially struggling family, but had expensive tastes. She loved to dress up, wear jewelry, and spend her time in beauty salons, massage parlors, and entertainment clubs rather than in the library. Consequently, her grades were poor, and she was failing several classes. According to Jia Yi, Wu Jiang was the financier of this lifestyle. Wu Jiang came from a well-off family. His father was a government official, and they owned a car. Despite his family's wealth, Wu Jiang worked hard and studied, seemingly devoted to providing for Zhu. Jia Yi admitted she admired Wu Jiang's patience, noting that he tolerated behavior from Zhu that most men would have walked away from. But then, Jia Yi dropped a bombshell that shifted the entire trajectory of the investigation. She hesitated, then revealed that there was a third person in the picture, a man named Chen Jiawang. Jia Yi told the detectives that Zhu Yueping was not faithful. While Wu Jiang was doting on her, Zhu was secretly seeing Chen Jiawang, a 40-year-old local Beijing man. Zhu had confided only in Jia Yi about this affair. Wu Jiang had absolutely no idea. Chen Jiawang was wealthy and married. According to what Zhu had told Jia, Chen despised his wife, claiming she was unattractive and that he had only married her for her family's assets. Chen and Zhu had met at a club 6 months prior. Captivated by Zhu's youth and beauty, Chen had pursued her, and Zhu, attracted by his deep pockets, had agreed to the affair. It was a dangerous game. Chen had a wife, and Zhu had a live-in boyfriend. Jia Yi then recalled a terrifying incident that had occurred not long before the murder. She and Zhu were walking down the street when a motorcycle carrying 2 masked men pulled up alongside them. The men didn't attack physically, but they pointed directly at Zhu Yueping's face and issued a chilling warning. Stop stealing other women's husbands. If you don't stop, you will be punished. Following that confrontation, Zhu began receiving anonymous text messages filled with threats. Zhu was convinced the person behind the harassment was Chen Jiawang's wife, but she refused to end the affair, addicted to the financial benefits Chen provided. Just days before she disappeared, Zhu received another message. This one wasn't just a warning, it was a direct threat on her life. Armed with the damning information provided by the victim's best friend, the Beijing police immediately pivoted their investigation toward a new prime suspect. The revelation of the affair provided a classic motive: jealousy and rage. The threats issued by the masked men on the motorcycle and the anonymous text messages pointed directly to the wife of Zhu Yueping's lover. The investigators wasted no time. Based on the details Jia Yi provided, they located the residence of the wealthy lover, Chen Jiawang. When they arrived, they were met by his wife, a 34-year-old woman named Liu Yahong. The detectives were prepared for a difficult interrogation, expecting denial or evasion. However, when confronted with the accusations of harassment and intimidation against Zhu Yueping, Li Yahong did not flinch. In a candid admission that surprised the officers, Liu Yahong confessed immediately to the campaign of terror. She admitted that she was the one who had hired the thugs to corner Zhu Yueping on the street. She admitted to sending the barrage of threatening text messages. She told the police, with a voice trembling with suppressed anger, that she could no longer tolerate her husband's infidelity or the audacity of a university student trying to steal him away. She wanted Zhu Yueping to feel fear, to look over her shoulder, and ultimately to leave her family alone. However, when the detectives pressed her on the murder itself, asking where she was on the night of April 8th, Li Yahong's demeanor shifted from angry to defensive but confident. She stated firmly that while she hated Zhu Yueping, she had no hand in her death. She provided an alibi that seemed almost too convenient. On April 8th, she and her husband, Chen Jiawang, were not even in Beijing. They had been on an overseas vacation with extended family members and had only returned to China the morning after Zhu disappeared. The police immediately moved to verify this claim. They checked flight manifests and passport stamps, and the evidence held up. Liu Yihong and Qin Jiawang had indeed been thousands of miles away when Zhu Yuping vanished. The detectives then tracked down the two thugs Liu Yihong had hired for the intimidation job. It turned out they were not professional hitmen, but merely relatives of Liu Yihong, who had agreed to help her scare off the mistress. Crucially, these relatives had also been on the family trip abroad. The entire group was cleared of suspicion regarding the homicide. The timeline simply did not work. The investigation had hit a wall. The most promising lead, the scorned wife with a history of making death threats, was a dead end. Detectives went back to Jiayi, hoping to wring out more information about Zhu Yuping's complex social life. Jiayi then revealed yet another layer of the victim's secret world. Aside from Wu Jiang and Qin Jiawang, there was a third man. Jiayi told police that Zhu had a murky, undefined relationship with a man she knew only by the surname Ye. Information on this individual was scarce. Jiayi had never met him and knew very little about him, other than the fact that Zhu had mentioned he was the owner of a jewelry store. This detail sparked a new theory. A jewelry store owner implied wealth, fitting Zhu's pattern of targeting rich men. Could this mysterious Mr. Ye be the key? Had a transaction gone wrong? Or perhaps he was another married man whose wife was less forgiving than Liu Yihong. Just as the task force was preparing to launch a manhunt for this elusive jeweler, the case took a shocking and abrupt turn. They didn't need to hunt for the killer anymore. He walked right through their front door. When the officers at the station looked up to see who had come to surrender, they were stunned into silence. Standing before them, looking defeated and broken, was Wu Jiang, the distraught boyfriend, who had reported Zhu missing just days earlier. The young man who had frantically searched hospitals and led his classmates through the dark woods was now confessing to strangling the woman he claimed to love. To understand how a promising university student transformed into a cold-blooded killer, investigators had to delve into Wu Jiang's past. Born in 1985 in the Xuanwu district of Beijing, Wu Jiang's life was defined by a sense of abandonment from an early age. He was the youngest of 3 children, but his family unit shattered when he was just 2 years old. His parents divorced, and the family was fractured. His 2 older sisters were split up, one going with the father and one with the mother. Wu Jiang, however, was left in the care of his grandparents. For the vast majority of his childhood, he rarely saw his parents or his siblings. He grew up in a quiet house with elderly guardians, observing other children with their complete families and feeling a deep, quiet resentment. Neighbors remembered him as a well-behaved, obedient boy who was mature beyond his years. He helped his grandparents with chores and never caused trouble, likely driven by a subconscious fear that if he misbehaved, he would be abandoned again. Despite the physical absence, his father remained financially present. Every month, his father would call to check in and send a generous allowance. Wu Jiang received 600 yuan, roughly $75 each month, as pocket money. In the late 90s and early 2000s in China, this was a considerable sum for a student, far more than what his peers received. Wu Jiang channeled his loneliness into his studies. He was intelligent and academically gifted, consistently ranking at the top of his class. However, the emotional void left by his parents was a wound that never healed. During his school years, cruel classmates would bully him, mocking him as the boy whose parents didn't want him. These taunts forged a deep insecurity in him, a desperate need for validation and acceptance that would later make him vulnerable to manipulation. In 2003, at the age of 18, Wu Jiang's hard work paid off. He was admitted to the prestigious Beijing University of Technology, majoring in Japanese. It was a proud moment for his grandparents and a moment of redemption for Wu Jiang. He was no longer just the abandoned child. He was a scholar at a top-tier university. During his freshman year, he continued to excel, winning scholarships and maintaining his status as a top student. Despite his academic success, he remained socially awkward, his appearance was average, and his shyness kept him on the periphery of the social scene. But everything changed in his sophomore year. His father, perhaps acting out of guilt for his years of absence, or simply pride in his son's success, decided to give Wu Jiang a significant reward. He bought him a car. It was a vehicle worth over 100,000 yuan, equivalent to about $12,500 at the time. In 2004, for a university student to own a private car was incredibly rare. It was a luxury status symbol that set him apart from 99% of the student body. Initially, Wu Jiang was hesitant. He didn't want the attention, but his father insisted, framing the car as compensation for all the years of missed birthdays and empty holidays. Wu Jiang accepted the gift, and overnight, his life transformed. When he drove the car onto campus, the perception of Wu Jiang shifted violently. He was no longer the quiet, nerdy scholarship student. In the eyes of his peers, he was now a fuerdai, a rich, second-generation kid, the son of a wealthy tycoon. Rumors spread like wildfire that his father was a powerful business magnate with immense financial resources. At first, Wu Jiang was uncomfortable with the misunderstanding. He knew his father was a government employee, comfortably middle class, but certainly not a tycoon. However, he soon found that the rumors brought him something he had craved his entire life: attention and respect. Suddenly, people wanted to be his friend. He was invited to parties and social gatherings. His circle expanded rapidly. Seduced by the sudden popularity, Wu Jiang made a fatal error. He didn't correct the rumors. He let everyone believe the lie. He began to drift away from his studies, skipping library sessions to drive friends to clubs and entertainment venues in the city center. He became the chauffeur for his new group of friends, eager to please, eager to belong. It was this flashy car and the false reputation of immense wealth that caught the eye of Zhu Yueping. Zhu Yueping was a fellow student, a Beijing native from a working-class family that struggled to make ends meet. Unlike Wu Jiang, she was not interested in academics. She was, however, blessed with striking beauty and a sharp understanding of her own appeal. She had a clear goal for her life, and it didn't involve a career. She wanted to marry rich. She had dated several men before, but she discarded them as soon as she realized they couldn't support the lavish lifestyle she felt she deserved. From a distance, she observed Wu Jiang. She saw the car. She heard the rumors about his tycoon father. To her, Wu Jiang was the perfect target. Wealthy, seemingly naive, and desperate for affection. She decided she would make him hers. Since they studied in different departments, their paths did not cross naturally. So Zhu Yueping orchestrated a meeting. One afternoon, as she saw Wu Jiang's car driving slowly through the campus grounds, she executed her plan. She waited for the vehicle to approach and then stepped out in front of it, feigning distraction. The car bumped her a minor impact, exactly as she had calculated. She collapsed to the ground, crying out in exaggerated pain. Panic-stricken, Wu Jiang rushed out of the vehicle. He was terrified he had seriously hurt her. He immediately helped her into the car and drove her to the university hospital for a checkup. The guilt he felt was immense, and Zhu Yueping played on it perfectly. She was forgiving, sweet, and vulnerable. By the time they left the hospital, she had his phone number. The trap was set. In the weeks that followed, Zhu Yueping manufactured coincidental encounters. She would figure out his schedule and walk past his classroom just as he was leaving, flashing a shy smile and remarking on how fate kept bringing them together. She told her friends loudly enough for him to hear that she and Wu Jiang had a special connection. She began asking him for small favors. Could he drive her to the mall? Could he take her to the cinema? She framed these requests as innocent hangouts, but she used every opportunity to close the distance. She would dress provocatively, wearing heavy makeup and outfits that highlighted her figure. something Wu Jiang, with his limited experience with women, was entirely unprepared for. He was captivated. Here was one of the most beautiful girls on campus, showing interest in him. For a boy who had grown up feeling unwanted, her attention was a powerful drug. He didn't see the manipulation. He only saw a dream girl who seemed to like him for who he was. Within a month of the staged car accident, they were officially a couple. When Wu Jiang brought his new girlfriend home to meet his father, the reaction was not what he expected. His father, a man of the world, saw through Zhu Yueping almost immediately. He saw a girl who was too focused on material things, too eager to spend money she didn't earn. He warned Wu Jiang that this girl was trouble and demanded that he end the relationship. But Wu Jiang, for the first time in his life, defied his father. He was in love, or at least he thought he was. Caught between his father's disapproval and his girlfriend's intense affection, he chose her. Under pressure from his father, he briefly tried to distance himself, but Zhu Yueping was tenacious. She wasn't about to let her golden ticket slip away so easily. She cried, she pleaded, and she manipulated his emotions until he came back to her. Realizing that he couldn't live without her, and wanting to escape his father's judgment, Wu Jiang made a decision that would accelerate his financial ruin. During the summer break of his sophomore year, he and Zhu Yueping decided to move in together. They rented an apartment off campus, creating their own little world. This was the beginning of the end. To maintain the facade of the wealthy heir that Zhu believed him to be, Wu Jiang began to burn through his resources. He used his monthly allowance money meant for his education and living expenses to fund her desires. He took her shopping for clothes she didn't need and paid for expensive meals at high-end restaurants. Zhu Yueping accepted this generosity as her due, never once reaching for her own wallet. However, as the months went on, the cracks in the facade began to show. Wu Jiang discovered that Zhu's romantic history was far more colorful than she had admitted. She had a string of ex-boyfriends, all dumped for financial reasons. He realized that to keep her, he had to keep paying. Terrified of losing her, he took on part-time jobs, working late nights to supplement his allowance. He was exhausted, juggling his studies, his jobs, and her demands. But no matter how hard he worked, it was never enough. Zhu Yueping's appetite for luxury was insatiable, and Wu Jiang was bleeding dry. He didn't know it yet, but he was drowning, and the woman he was fighting to keep was already looking for a bigger life raft. The cohabitation, which Wu Jiang had envisioned as a romantic paradise, quickly devolved into a harsh lesson in financial reality. While Zhu Yueping basked in the comfort of their shared apartment, Wu Jiang was slowly drowning. He began to realize that the dynamic of their relationship was entirely one-sided. Zhu Yueping, despite coming from a background of poverty, had no concept of labor or domestic responsibility. She refused to lift a finger around the house. She did not cook, she did not clean, and she certainly did not contribute to the rent or utility bills. She treated their apartment not as a shared home, but as a hotel, where Wu Jiang was both the financier and the concierge. Wu Jiang, who was juggling his rigorous university coursework with part-time jobs, was exhausted. He would return home late at night, his body aching from fatigue, only to find the apartment in disarray and Zhu waiting to be taken out for dinner or entertainment. She never once asked him if he was tired. She never inquired about his day or whether he had enough money to cover their expenses. Her focus was entirely inward, centered on her own comfort and the maintenance of her appearance. The financial strain was becoming unsustainable. Before meeting Zhu, Wu Jiang had managed to save about 2,000 yuan, roughly $250, a modest nest egg for a student. Within a single month of dating her, that savings account was empty. His monthly allowance from his father, which had once made him the envy of his peers, evaporated almost as soon as it arrived. He was forced to humble himself and beg his grandmother for an additional 1,000 yuan, just to cover the cost of a weekend trip Zhu had demanded. The pressure reached a boiling point. Wu Jiang sat Zhu down one evening. his pride swallowed, and laid out their dire financial situation. He suggested, gently at first, that perhaps she could find a part-time job. Even a few hours a week would help alleviate the burden. Zhu Yuping's reaction was not one of understanding, but of sheer indignation. She looked at him with genuine shock, as if he had suggested she commit a crime. She told him, with a chilling matter-of-factness, that a girl with her beauty was not born to do menial labor. She stated explicitly that her purpose in life was to find a wealthy man to rely on, someone who could shield her from the indignities of work. She looked Wu Jiang in the eye and delivered an ultimatum. If he could not guarantee the lifestyle she deserved, then they should break up immediately. She would find someone who could. Wu Jiang was stunned into silence. Her words confirmed his deepest insecurity, that he was only valuable as a wallet. Yet, his fear of abandonment, rooted in his childhood, was stronger than his self-respect. He internalized her criticism, blaming himself for being useless and unable to provide. Instead of leaving her, he doubled his efforts, taking on more shifts and sinking deeper into exhaustion to prove his worth. In October of 2005, the situation complicated dramatically. Zhu Yuping discovered she was pregnant. For Wu Jiang, this news brought a complex mix of emotions. Despite their troubles, the idea of a family, of a child of his own, sparked a flicker of hope. He thought of his own fractured childhood and saw a chance to build the family he never had. He told Zhu he wanted to keep the baby. He was willing to marry her, to drop out if necessary, to make it work. Zhu Yuping, however, had no such sentimental attachments. She was furious. To her, a baby was a parasite that would ruin her figure and tether her to a life of mediocrity. She was in the prime of her youth, and she refused to let a pregnancy derail her hunt for a wealthy future. She demanded an abortion immediately, but the cruelty didn't stop there. She told Wu Jiang that if he didn't come up with the money for the procedure, she would go to a back alley clinic herself, and after it was done, she would leave him for good. Desperate to save the relationship and ensure her safety, Wu Jiang made a drastic decision. He sold his car. The vehicle, his father's gift and the source of his social status, was sold for 60,000 yuan, about $7,500. It was a fraction of its original value, but he needed the cash instantly. He paid for the abortion and the subsequent medical care, pampering her as she recovered. However, once the medical bills were settled, Zhu demanded the remaining money from the car sale. She wanted to go shopping. She wanted to treat herself as compensation for the physical trauma she had endured. Wu Jiang, showing a rare moment of spine, refused. He needed the leftover funds to pay off the debts he had accrued over the previous months. This refusal shifted the dynamic once again. With the car gone and the money dried up, Zhu Yuping's affection turned into open disdain. She began to treat him with cold indifference, finding excuses to avoid him and spending more time out of the apartment. Wu Jiang was terrified. He could feel her slipping away. In a pathetic attempt to win back her favor and maintain the illusion of wealth, he used the last of his money to rent a car, pretending he had bought a new one just to drive her around. The charade eventually collapsed when his father came to visit and noticed the car was missing. When pressed, Wu Jiang broke down and confessed everything: the pregnancy, the abortion, the sale of the vehicle. He expected his father to disown him. Instead, his father, seeing his son's utter despair, took pity on him. He gave Wu Jiang another 60,000 yuan to buy the car back, hoping to stabilize his son's life. Wu Jiang retrieved the car, thinking this would solve everything. He thought the return of the vehicle would bring back the Zhu Yuping who had smiled at him, but the goalposts had moved. Zhu Yuping no longer just wanted a boyfriend with a car. She wanted a husband with a future. She bluntly told him that she was looking for a partner who had a house, a car, and significant assets, someone who would allow her to sit back and enjoy life without lifting a finger. To keep her from leaving, Wu Jiang played his final card. He told her about a property his family owned, a house in the suburbs of Beijing worth several million yuan. He lied, or perhaps exaggerated, promising her that this house was legally his and would be their marital home in the future. This piqued Zhu's interest. The prospect of owning a multi-million yuan villa was enough to keep her engaged. She agreed to stay, anchoring her hopes on this property. However, in early 2006, reality intruded again. Wu Jiang's father announced that he was getting remarried. His new fiancée was pregnant. The father wanted to use the suburban house for the wedding and potentially as a home for his new family. When Wu Jiang relayed this news to Zhu Yueping, she went ballistic. She saw the new stepmother and the unborn half-sibling as direct threats to her future assets. She began to poison Wu Jiang's mind, whispering constantly that his father was going to abandon him again, just like he did when Wu was a child. She insisted that if he didn't fight for the house now, the outsiders would steal everything. She scolded him for being weak, for being a coward. Day and night, she pressured him to confront his father and demand the deed to the house. She urged him to move into the property immediately, to stake a claim before the wedding could happen. Under her relentless nagging, Wu Jiang argued with his father, straining their relationship to the breaking point. On April 8, 2006, the tension culminated in a fateful trip. Zhu Yuping commanded Wu Jiang to drive her to a furniture store. Her plan was aggressive. They would buy furniture that night, drive to the suburban house, and physically occupy it, forcing his father's hand. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. As they drove, Zhu Yueping sat in the passenger seat, her voice a constant drone of complaints. She berated him for driving too slowly, for not handling his father correctly, for not being man enough to seize what was theirs. Wu Jiang drove in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, absorbing the abuse. They arrived at the furniture store. Zhu Yuping, eager to get started, hopped out of the car and marched toward the entrance. In her haste, she left her cell phone sitting on the passenger seat. Wu Jiang stayed behind for a moment to park the car properly. As the engine idled, the silence of the car was broken by the sharp chirp of a text message notification from Zhu's phone. Wu Jiang glanced at the screen. The preview of the message was odd, the tone too familiar. A sinking feeling hit his stomach. Zhu Yuping never locked her phone, likely because she considered Wu Jiang too submissive to ever dare snoop. He picked up the device. His hands were trembling. He opened the inbox. What he found shattered his world. The inbox was filled with messages from a number he didn't recognize. As he scrolled back, he saw conversations that were explicitly romantic and sexual. But the text messages were just the beginning. He opened the photo gallery. There, glowing on the small screen, were photos of Zhu Yueping. She was in bed, entangled with another man. They were intimate, smiling, looking like a couple in love. The timestamps on the photos were recent, taken during the very time she had been pressuring Wu Jiang to fight his father for the house. Then, another message came in. It was a direct proposition. Come to the hotel tonight. Same room as usual. Wu Jiang sat frozen in the driver's seat. The air seemed to leave the car. For 2 years, he had sacrificed everything for this woman. He had alienated his family, sold his car, spent every yuan he had, and humiliated himself repeatedly. He had believed that her coldness was just her personality, that her greed was just insecurity. He had believed that deep down, she loved him. The phone in his hand was undeniable proof that he was nothing but a tool to her. She was cheating on him, likely with the wealthy men she had always admired, while using him as a safety net to secure a house. She was playing him for a fool. At that moment, Zhu Yueping walked back out of the store. She looked annoyed, waving for him to come inside. Wu Jiang quickly locked the phone and placed it back on the seat. His face went blank. A cold, dark resolve washed over him. He didn't scream. He didn't confront her. He simply turned off the engine and then turned it back on. When she opened the door, asking what he was doing. He spoke calmly. He told her they didn't need to buy furniture right now. He said he knew a better place, a surprise he wanted to show her first. Zhu Yueping, thinking he had perhaps prepared a romantic gesture or a gift, lit up. Her annoyance vanished, replaced by excitement. She climbed back into the car, buckling her seatbelt, completely unaware that the man beside her had just mentally crossed a line of no return. Wu Jiang drove out of the city center. He navigated away from the bright lights of the shopping district, heading toward the desolate outskirts of the city. He drove for nearly an hour. Zhu Yueping eventually began to question him, asking where they were going and why it was so dark. Wu Jiang didn't answer. He turned onto a narrow, unlit road flanked by dense woods, the area known for being a blind spot. He pulled the car over to the shoulder and killed the engine. "Why are we stopping?" Zhu asked, peering into the darkness. "What is this place?" Wu Jiang unbuckled his seatbelt. He turned to face her. In the darkness, she couldn't see the emptiness in his eyes. He didn't say a word. He didn't ask for an explanation about the photos. He simply reached out with both hands. Before she could react, his fingers wrapped around her throat. The shock on her face was invisible in the dark cabin, but her struggle was immediate. She clawed at his hands, kicking against the dashboard. But Wu Jiang was fueled by 2 years of suppressed rage, humiliation, and betrayal. He squeezed tighter, channeling every insult, every dollar spent, every moment of mockery into his grip. The struggle was brief. The thrashing stopped. The gasping ceased. Wu Jiang sat in the silence of the car, his hands still around the neck of the woman he had worshipped. She was gone. Panic did not set in immediately. Instead, a strange, horrific practicality took over. He looked at her lifeless body and knew he had to get rid of it. He started the car and drove deeper into the darkness, looking for a place to dump the body where it wouldn't be found immediately. He found a secluded patch of woods, dragged her body out of the passenger seat, and left her amidst the trees. He didn't take her jewelry. He didn't take her watch. He wanted nothing from her. He got back into his car and drove to the busy Wangfujing district. He parked the car in an underground garage and abandoned it there, hoping to distance himself from the vehicle that had become a crime scene. He then walked home to the empty apartment and began to stage the scene that would greet him when he returned. The next day, the open door, the missing suitcase, the lie that she had run away. But the police found something else in that apartment that Wu Jiang had forgotten about. A diary. While Wu Jiang sat in a holding cell, awaiting his day in court, investigators returned to the apartment that had served as the stage for this tragedy. They were looking for anything that could corroborate Wu Jiang's story of financial abuse and emotional manipulation. Tucked away in a drawer, buried beneath the clutter of a life cut short, they found a diary belonging to Zhu Yueping. The entry dated April 1st, 2006, just a week before her death, offered a chilling glimpse into her mind. It was not a chronicle of love or happy memories, but a manifesto of regret and disdain. In her own handwriting, Zhu Yueping had scrawled a bitter critique of the man she was living with. She wrote, "Why am I so incredibly unlucky? Of all the people in Beijing, I had to meet a pauper, a man with a terrible personality who has nothing to his name. I have been completely deceived by him. When we first met, he bragged about his family, about how wealthy and connected they were. It was all lies. He is nothing but a fraud, and I despise him for it. He even borrowed 1,800 yuan from me, money I needed just to buy lottery tickets, hoping for a miracle. And what did he pay back? A pathetic 200 yuan. He slapped me across the face so hard I saw stars. He told me he was teaching me a lesson on behalf of my mother. He has choked me twice now, squeezing until I thought I was going to die. Who does he think he is? He is nobody." This diary entry was a double-edged sword for the prosecution. On one hand, it confirmed Wu Jiang's defense that the relationship was volatile and transactional. It proved that Zhu Yueping viewed him with contempt and felt trapped by his financial incompetence. However, it also painted a damning picture of Wu Jiang as a violent abuser long before the murder took place. The references to choking and slapping revealed a pattern of escalating physical aggression, suggesting that the murder in the car was not a sudden snap, but the culmination of habitual domestic violence. The trial of Wu Jiang began later that year in Beijing, drawing significant media attention. The public was fascinated by the story of the university student, the fake tycoon, and the deadly romance. Standing in the dock, Wu Jiang looked nothing like the arrogant rich kid he had pretended to be. He looked small, pale, and defeated. When questioned by the judge, Wu Jiang did not deny the killing. He admitted to strangling Zhu Yuping, but he framed his actions within the context of psychological torture. He told the court that while he had been violent in the past, it was a reaction to the relentless pressure Zhu placed on him. She demanded a life of luxury that I could not provide, Wu Jiang testified, his voice trembling. Every day was an argument about money. She constantly instigated fights between me and my father. She told me I had to seize my father's house, that I had to fight my stepmother, that I had to be ruthless. She poked at the deepest wounds of my childhood, my abandonment, my broken family. She used those traumas as weapons to manipulate me. He paused, looking out at the gallery, and delivered a line that silenced the room. I sacrificed everything for her. I sold my car. I stole from my grandmother. I worked until I collapsed. I tried to become the man she wanted, and in the end, I discovered she was laughing at me, cheating on me with men who had the money I didn't. When I saw those photos on her phone, something inside me broke. If any of you were in my position, if you had given your soul to someone only to find out it was all a joke to them, could you have remained calm? A murmur rippled through the courtroom. While no one condoned the murder, the narrative of the exploited, heartbroken student struck a chord with many. It was a story of a young man pushed beyond his limits. However, the prosecution was ready to dismantle any sympathy the defense tried to build. They introduced a piece of evidence that showed the depth of Wu Jiang's despair and moral decay, a suicide note found during the investigation. Before surrendering, Wu Jiang had written a final letter addressed to his grandmother, his father, and Zhu Yuping's parents. The contents were read aloud, revealing the chaotic mind of a man at the end of his rope. To his grandmother, the woman who raised him, he wrote, "Grandma, it isn't that I didn't want to visit you for the past 2 months. It is because I have nothing left. I sold everything of value I owned. I have no face to stand before you. I am ashamed." To his father, the tone shifted to resentment and desperation. "You give me 600 yuan a month for living expenses. Do you think that is enough? I have to support a girlfriend. I have to maintain a lifestyle. Without money, what was I supposed to do? I had no choice but to steal and rob just to survive." To Zhu Yuping's parents, the note was an eerie justification of his actions. "You raised a daughter, and it was not easy, but you spoiled her too much. She is impossible to satisfy. I have no money. I cannot coax her with gifts anymore. I cannot keep her with wealth, so I had to use this method to keep her with me forever." The letter revealed that Wu Jiang had contemplated suicide after the murder. He described living in a state of constant terror for the days following the crime. He couldn't eat or sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. Nightmares plagued him, and the guilt became a physical weight he couldn't carry. He had tried to work up the courage to end his own life, considering various methods, but in the end, fear held him back. Unable to die and unable to live with the secret, he had gotten drunk and poured his heart out to a close friend. It was this friend who had convinced him that there was no running away, leading to his surrender at the police station. During the final phase of the trial, the testimony of Jia, Zhu Yuping's best friend, proved to be the final nail in the coffin for the victim's reputation, though it did not absolve Wu Jiang of his crime. Jia took the stand and confirmed Wu Jiang's darkest suspicions. Wu Jiang is right, Jia told the court. Zhu Yueping never loved him. To her, he was just a transaction. Jia revealed that Zhu had explicitly told her she had no romantic feelings for Wu Jiang. The pregnancy in 2005 had been a calculated trap. Zhu had intended to use the baby to force a marriage, believing Wu Jiang came from a wealthy family. She thought a child would be her ticket into the aristocracy. However, when she realized that Wu Jiang was cash poor and that his father controlled the money, she aborted the plan and the baby immediately. Jia confirmed that during the time Zhu lived with Wu Jiang, she was actively seeing other men. The sleepovers at Jiayi's house were almost always alibis for liaisons with older, wealthier lovers like Qin Jiawang. Jiayi admitted she had tried to warn her friend. She had told Zhu that playing with fire would eventually get her burned, that deceiving a man as intense as Wu Jiang was dangerous. She wouldn't listen, Jiayi said, looking down at her hands. She told me she would continue to squeeze him for every penny until he was dry, and then she would leave him. She said there was nothing to be afraid of. In his final statement to the court, Wu Jiang bowed deep. He apologized to the police for the wild goose chase he had sent them on, fabricating the missing person report and staging the robbery in the apartment. He apologized to Zhu's parents for taking their daughter, and he apologized to his own family for the shame he had brought upon them. "I know I have committed an unforgivable sin," he said quietly. "I let my vanity and my insecurity destroy 2 lives. I wanted to be someone I wasn't, and I paid the ultimate price." On a cold day in December 2006, the Beijing First Intermediate People's Court delivered its verdict. Wu Jiang was found guilty of intentional homicide. The court acknowledged the complex emotional circumstances and the victim's role in provoking the conflict. But the brutality of the crime, strangling a defenseless woman and dumping her body in the woods, demanded the harshest punishment. Wu Jiang was sentenced to death. However, the court granted a 2-year reprieve. In the Chinese legal system, this is a suspended death sentence. It means that if the convict displays good behavior and undergoes reform during the 2 years, the sentence is typically commuted to life imprisonment. It was a small mercy, a recognition that while he was a killer, he was not a monster beyond redemption. In addition to the sentence, the court ordered Wu Jiang's family to pay over 300,000 yuan, approximately $38,000 in compensation, to the parents of Zhu Yueping. It was a crushing financial blow to a family that had already lost its only son to prison. The case of the fake tycoon became a cautionary tale in Beijing. It was a story devoid of heroes. It was a tragedy of mutual deception, where a young man lied about who he was to get love, and a young woman lied about who she loved to get money. Observers at the trial were left with a haunting thought, one that circulated on internet forums and in coffee shops across the city. If only they had been honest with each other from the start. If Wu Jiang had admitted he was just a student living on an allowance, Zhu Yueping would have never looked at him twice. They would have passed each other on campus like strangers, and both would still be alive today, but in a world obsessed with status and wealth. The truth was the one thing neither could afford. What do you think about this case? Do you believe Wu Jiang's sentence was fair, considering the psychological manipulation he endured? Or does the cold-blooded nature of the murder justify the ultimate punishment? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching this episode. If you found this story compelling, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world's most shocking criminal cases. Stay safe, and we will see you in the next investigation.